A woman doesn't have to do much work. We have opportunities, but we have pressures. We've lost our biological soft makeup and we are burning ourselves out. If your wellness routine is stressing you out and it's creating lack of ease, it's going to lead to disease. When I studied Ayurveda from the ancient texts. It still blows my mind after 20 years of reading this, because every time I'm like, how did they know this? We know everything. We just need to create enough coherence within us to be able to see it. Like deer don't need to be trained that, hey, you have to wake up in the morning, you want to graze, and tigers know that they're nocturnal mammals. They're not going to be like, I'm going to do 5 o'clock yoga stretch. What happened to human beings is, as we discovered fire to cook our foods, we became intellectual beings and we stopped trusting our bodies, because the more you are in your mind, the less you can trust your body. I don't want to name brands, but like if there's 150 complicated names which are all chemicals and there's one little
ashwagandha written at the back,
forget it. When I started practicing Ayurveda, people in the West were like, are you what? Like, what do you do? My mom was like, okay, good, you want to do it, you do it, but it's not a career.
Someone could change only one habit for the next 1 year. Not because it's trendy, because it genuinely transforms their inner climate. What would it be? Nidhi, you've told us that you say the body already knows, right? Tell me, if that's true, when did humans stop trusting their own bodies and start outsourcing that wisdom to experts?
So Ashna, for that, we'll have to go back to like understanding like what species listen to their bodies. And the answer is every other species besides human beings, right? For example, like deer don't need to be trained that, hey, you have to wake up in the morning, you want to graze. And tigers know that they're nocturnal mammals. They're not going to be like, I'm going to do 5 o'clock yoga stretch. And you know worms with like 2 sense organs, not even a full brain. They understand that how they need to dig their holes, what they need to eat, what's food, what's medicine. The bear knows when to hibernate. So you get the drift. Every other species on the planet knows. Now what happened to human beings is, as we discovered fire to cook our foods, which is incredible because it changed our gut microbiome, and our brains became bigger. So we started using our brains a lot more. And over a period of several 100,000 years, we became intellectual beings. And we stopped trusting our bodies, because the more you are in your mind, the less you can trust your body. And then we have come to a time in the last 100 years where we are catching information faster than we can process. So if we use our brain, nothing wrong with it, and you have time to process, your integration happens. What you've understood, what the information you've taken through the world, the thoughts you've had, you've processed, that's internalized as an integration. The more you think, the more information you receive, the less you process, the less access you have to the intelligence of your body. And over a period of doing this, and we're doing this even more and more now with social media and all this hundreds of experts' advice, and the more we're doing it, the less we understand how to listen to our instincts.
Yeah, I completely, agree there, because like you said, we've evolved. And we were also like, like animals in sense of wake up, hunt, eat, gather, go to bed. Like every other animal is processing information. But very correctly how you put it, that we've evolved to the point that, there's too much information. And we obviously aren't processing at that speed of the speed we're consuming it at.
Exactly. And like evolution is a great word, but like you don't always evolve in the ways that support you, right? So we are evolving in a way that is not, we cannot catch up. We cannot catch up to our own evolution and our own intellect.
Right. So tell me, long before you knew any of this science, right? What was the emotional weather of the house that you grew up in? Tell us a little bit about, can you still feel the particular climate in your body today?
Feel the climate in my body, or in the emotional weather of the house? So emotional climate. Okay, so let me talk about how I grew up, right? So I grew up in a family which was highly spiritual, and yet we lived in Mumbai, and in many ways very modern and ahead of their times. My grandfather was an Ayurvedic healer, and we had this intelligent language that was just used commonly. So things like that connected you to the cycles of the day and the night, and qualities of foods, and also qualities of human beings' tendencies. So I think I started to see the world in patterns. We were exposed to a lot of spiritual texts. So Buddhist, Jain, Hindu. My grandfather would read the Gita. I went for Vipassana meditation when I was 15 years old.
Wow.
So, we had the whole idea that there's an inner world, which is really more real than the outer world, as you and I were just talking about, was given to me at a very young age. And yet, I will say, when you grow up in a family which has all of that, it can be hard in a way that there's a lot of expectation that you put on yourself.
Correct.
And the whole idea that you have been given this human life and you better make good out of it for a young child is a lot.
Yeah.
So it was a mixture of, wow, this is incredible. I love the way systems work in my house. There was a lot of harmony amongst people. And yet, like, oh my God, I have to do this for myself. I grew up like I was born, like I really believe we come from lifetimes of what we carry lifetimes of our baggage and our tendencies. So I was definitely, I still am, a very bubbly, vivacious human being. And I was all over the place. I was extremely scattered. And whenever I found those moments of like just perfect stillness, I always felt like there was a download. I learned something that I had not. It's like when you talk about Newton sitting under that tree, he was not in the laboratory. He wasn't thinking. He just saw an apple fall and he had an epiphany. And I started noticing that every time I have, like growing up in a large joint family, because there was so much noise and chaos. But when I was able to go into that state, even momentarily, I connected something. And I didn't realize how, but over the years, being exposed to patterns and rhythms of the universe, being exposed to this reality that we can carry within us, the ever all-knowing, we know everything. As
Correct.
beings, just how animals know the weather and the tides and the tsunamis, we know everything. So being exposed to that possibility and then experiencing it in moments, I think somewhere my life came almost like a full circle. And I said, look, there is so much depth in this wisdom and we have it within us. And I want to just pair this with one more thing. When I studied Ayurveda, and I studied Ayurveda from the ancient texts, and Ashna, I will tell you, it still makes me emotional, blows my mind after 20 years of reading this, because every time I'm like, how did they know this? Like, how do they know things that today modern researchers, concepts that are winning Nobel Prizes are written not in code language, in precision, in those texts? And that even reinforced what I had then come to, is that we know everything. We just need to create enough coherence within us to be able to see it.
Yeah, it's like they say, everything's inside you. You just have to tap into it.
You just have to tap into it. Like we know everything in the world. And the Ayurvedic texts enumerate that for you. But when you couple it with like tapping in with your wisdom and then using that to validate what you're experiencing and what you're coming to, you realize how easy and how much clarity you have. So that being said, I had this emotional weather. And yes, I did grow up with this whole idea of constantly being tuned in to your own climate at a physical level, at an emotional level, at a spiritual level. Am I always able to do it? I don't think I can do it 24/7. I think I would be Buddha if I did. I don't. But I certainly check in with myself several times a day. And I think when I am going drastically off equilibrium, not that I don't, I will, I absolutely will, I think I can tell. I can tell that there is self-awareness. At least at some point, I will catch myself. So yeah, that's the journey I am on.
That's amazing, because a lot of times, when people grow up in very disciplined homes or very aware homes, they run from it. So the opposite can happen as well. So for you to actually accept it and, go deep into it or deeper into it, you actually looked at your grandfather's study and be like, oh my God, I want to go into this as well. Because, many times, like you see 3 generations of doctors and the 4th one wants to be a DJ. He's like, I'm not doing this. I've seen this too much.
Yeah.
So that happens as well.
Yeah.
So it's great to, we're benefiting from the fact that you've actually, carried on.
No,
and I think most people, no matter how much they teach the world about the subjects that you talk about, don't do the inner work for themselves, like we spoke before. A lot is like teach, preach, but not practice.
Yeah.
And it's really nice to hear that, you check in on yourself and you kind of catch yourself going downwards, spiraling, whatever it is. Because a lot of people don't really hold themselves accountable. It's like they're teaching the world about it, but they won't really be like, oh, I go through it too. Very rarely you hear people, right?
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And I want to say one thing. Ashna, one of the reasons why every single member of my family, we are on a self-awareness journey, by the way, every person, 14 of us. And I would say because my grandfather never imposed, he just inspired.
Yeah.
So he lived a life of a saint, but with like so much acceptance for the modernizing world and not being rigid with us. Like I would say my fathers and uncles were stricter with us. My grandfather wasn't. And I think it's the seed that he planted is what we are watering now, because it was such a rich seed.
Wow, that's so beautiful. So you didn't choose Ayurveda so much as inherited, right? Was there a moment it stopped being your grandfather's legacy and become genuinely yours, or a version of you that you quietly wanted to walk away from it entirely? Did that ever happen?
So I'd say I took it for granted growing up. I really didn't. I was like, okay, this is how we live. I mean, how does it matter? Like, this is how we live. We know it. And like, I was never worried about health or wellness or anything. And I think nobody in my family was. Like, there was no concept of like being worried because health was a value system. It was built into our day. And I think when I moved to the US more than 22 years ago, and I realized that, look, I mean, it was a different concept of wellness.
Yeah.
And it was just the fear of disease. Like, it was never the freedom that comes from being well. And I was like, wow, this is not what I inherited. Now, that's also a time I had not had children at that point, but I thought about my whole life ahead of me. And I thought about, like, how can I bring my own kids into a world where this wisdom is not easily accessible? And I would say that's when I went back deeper and I said, this has to be my legacy to carry forward. And honestly, I didn't seek to influence anybody in the world besides my own life and my own ecosystem. When I started practicing Ayurveda, people in the West were like, "Are you what? Like, what do you do? Are you like?" They could not even pronounce the word
Pronounce the
Ayurveda,
word,
right?
yeah.
And I didn't bother. It didn't matter. Like my mom was like, "Okay, good. You want to do it? You do it, but it's not a career." I was like, "It's okay," but I was like, "I need this to be in every cell of my body." Like, it was Ashna. I was preoccupied 24/7. I couldn't think of anything else. I was possessed with this is what I have to do. Like, I cannot even tell you the calling was so
Strong,
deep
yeah.
that I just didn't choose it. It chose me. There's no getting away. And at that point there was no purpose, there was no path, there was no like the purpose was just to like carry this for me, for my family, and didn't matter. Anything else didn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, 20 years ago, there was no concept of influencing in
No,
any
influence
way.
meaning yeah, basically I mean
In
like,
any way,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
what I
yeah,
mean. Not
yeah.
as an influence. I mean, in any
Yeah,
way,
which I'm
there was
not.
no
Yeah.
concept.
Yeah.
It was, everything was a job.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like you could just tell people and teach people
Yeah.
just because you wanted
Yeah.
to. There was no
Yeah.
concept of that
No,
20 years ago.
no.
That's only come about in the last 10 years, a decade, a little bit more than a decade.
Yeah.
Before that didn't exist. It had to be a proper real job with a degree, otherwise no one listened.
Yeah. And I didn't even like, because I was living in the West, I didn't even think that was going to happen. Like today I have a full-fledged practice, but I didn't think that was going to happen. I was like, it's okay. If I never have a single patient or a single client, I'm fine. But I still need to do this.
Like passion wins over, right?
Passion and purpose just win over. Like
Yeah.
there was like, yeah, nothing could stop me at that point.
So tell me, Nidhi, someone comes to you for bloating, insomnia, or their skin. In your experience, what's the emotional pattern hiding underneath all this physical stuff? And the thing that they didn't talk to you about, but that's actually running the show.
So you're saying with a set of symptoms like this?
Yes.
Okay, so the set of symptoms that I see, which are linked, are bloating, insomnia, dry skin, dry hair, dry eyes, overstimulation. And usually what's running behind it, what's usually behind is overstimulation, lack of sleep, scatteredness, fear, worry, anxiety. Now the thing is, while yes, essentially some of these drive these symptoms, sometimes the symptoms will also drive it. So let's say you've had a big bag of popcorn and you've come back home, you will stay up at night but also your body chemistry, biochemistry will change in a way that you'll automatically be fearful, anxious, etc. Let's say you've overworked yourself or you overexercised to a point of depletion, you can still see all of these symptoms setting in. So these are symptoms that kind of flock together and you often treat them as separate symptoms and as a separate, but it's really the climate of the body, what we call has gone dry and windy. And it shows everywhere, dry skin, dry hair, wind in the gut, wind in the nervous system, it's everywhere. And you often start somewhere. You say, okay, let me work on my anxiety, or you work. But the truth is they can all be taken care of together when you look at Ayurveda. And those are the set of emotions that would dominate a constitution like that.
So there's 3 constitutions everyone talks about online, which I've come across: Pitta, Vata, and Kapha.
Yeah.
And I've had a few experts here as well on my podcast speaking about the same. But I feel like, sometimes it's hard to believe that everyone fits into those 3 molds.
Yeah.
So is it always the 3 molds or it's combinations?
So I tell you, we all need all 3, right? By the way, you cannot function. Kapha is all the building elements in your body. Pitta is all the transforming, metabolic, warm elements in your body. And Vata is all the drying, moving, depleting elements in your body. So if you think of a construction site, think about when you bring in all the raw materials, the cement, the bricks, That's kapha. We all have it. Building cells, cytoplasm, everything. If you had to build a human body, just the hardware from scratch, those are all kapha elements. Now work needs to begin. So things need to metabolize, transform. So in a construction site, think about all that drill, heating, you put the bricks, you create a cement, you get a kiln, you kind of start, baking, and that's Pitta. But things need to move for all of this to happen. Things need to move in the whole construction site. In your body, things need to move. Blood needs to move, breath needs to move, food needs to move. All of that is Vata. And in a construction site, of course, think about materials that need to move. And whatever is that's not needed is thrown away, is taken out of the site because you don't want clutter. Vata does all of that in your body. We have all three, each one. And they all have different properties. The builder, Kapha, the builder, is moist and it's bulky, it's moist, it creates structure, etc. Bones, tissue, lymph, plasma. Pitta, which is the transforming element, is hot and it's warm and it's juicy. It's like hot oil. It's a fuel in the body, warm fuel in the body. So your hormones, your digestive juices, your thinking capacity, they're subtle and gross. And then Vata is the movement, right? And evacuation and the depletion and drying of the body. Now, based on the person, you may have a different combination of these three. So you may be a builder, which means your body is building very easily, but doesn't mean it could be off balance in the other two as well. Ideally, you want appropriate amount of building, appropriate transformation, and whatever needs to move and then whatever needs to be thrown out, it all needs to be in proportion. It's not more or less, it's in proportion. Some texts will tell you that it's 33, 33, 33, but it changes at different phases of your life. That's what you really need. However, it doesn't happen. Many times, somebody could be building more, but body could be also overheated, and there's certain parts of the body that could be very dry. So you may see an imbalance of all three. What I've started working, I've created this concept called the inner climate method, and which is more comprehensible because at the end of the day, Kapha, Pitta, and Vata feel like jargon to people. And they're like, first now we have to learn the jargon, and then I have to fit in a box, and I don't even know what the box is. But when you talk about this concept of inner climate, for example, the person that you talked about, bloated, I could say that if they're really all over their body like this, their climate has become dry and windy. And we can relate to dry and windy. And we can say if somebody's climate has become dry and windy, then they need, grounding, they need steadiness, they need moisturizing, they need lubrication. So I have created a framework called the inner climate method, and I tell people to do that and then start there. But the truth is, we're born with a certain constitution, depending on how we live, what we do. Our Kapha, Pitta, Vata are constantly going, changing hands and changing how they perform in our body.
Do you think these constitutions are something we're born with genetically, or do you think they build over your life, like how you live?
So both, right? So you're born with something, and you're born with something that depends on the health of the sperm and the egg at the time of their union.
Yeah.
And then also the conditions in the womb, right?
That early on.
So genetically, how they come together, what the dad has, what the mother has, that footprint. And from that blueprint, what is the environment you get in the womb? There's a whole lifetime that happens in the womb, by the way. Whatever you can do outside, you can do those 9 months, you have that much opportunity. I think about that. So what your mother does, how the mother builds her own tissue, etc. And so then you're born with, till that point, then you can call that's constitution at birth. At birth, when you've received the egg and the sperm's qualities and the womb's qualities, this is your constitution at birth. Now, the choices that you make throughout your life will affect your constitution. That being said, let's say you have the tendency, a person is born with the tendency of building. The chances are they very easily will go off in that. They'll end up being builders. Like they'll be like overweight, obesity, diabetic. However, if they spot on early on in their life and they say, oh my God, I have 2 daughters, right? One daughter is hot and dry. And constitutionally, she's Pitta Vata, very sharp in the brain, very overstimulated, always working extremely hard. She can dehydrate herself, like the word dehydration is literally hot and dry, and she can burn out herself very quickly. So we identified that early on. Not saying that it's easy. With somebody of that pattern, they're so intense. But I know, Suhani needs to sleep, she needs some massages properly. I know the foods I'll give her, coconut is her best friend, etc. My other daughter, she's Pitta Kapha. So her body is warm and humid. She's more in flow. And that's a very good constitution when it's in balance. But we know that, oh my God, it's a really hot day. So we keep her cool. Her body is already grounded. She's already, she already has all of that. So I function with Suhani, my older one's dryness more and intensity. And with the younger ones, I just have to take care of her heat more than anything else. So only in the summer months. So understanding constitutions, your own constitution, whenever you are, and knowing that it'll change, right? When my older one hit adolescence, automatically her body settled a little bit. So you know what happens, when it happens, the life phases, and you don't have to know it all today. But I think you just start by understanding your climate, understanding my constitution today. And then you see, as you consume what you consume, as you interact with life, you see what changes and you become really self-aware of those little shifts. Like my daughters can talk this language. They understand their bodies really well.
That's amazing to have that kind of base, growing up, because you can always enhance what you have. But if you don't even know what you have, how do you enhance it? Or if something doesn't work for you, then I already know how to protect myself. So enhance or protect, both can only happen if I know. But if I don't know the base, then I'm probably running in the opposite direction of that I should be running in.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a very good way of saying, if you know what you have, I'm going to remember that line. You can enhance it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I wish, some of us knew as, I remember my grandmom being very particular, about this is the season, this is what you're going to eat. And she used to say things like to me, tumhara shareer bahut garam hai, to eat thandi cheezein.
Yes,
But at that time, you don't really pay attention and you're just
Yeah.
thinking, what does she know? She's so old-fashioned and
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
Not in those terms,
Yeah,
not
of
in a
course,
derogatory way.
course.
But you always think to yourself, what does my grandma really know? What do you mean by dry? What do you mean by this? What do you mean by heaty? I'm not heaty. She would not allow, like particularly me, she would not allow me to eat rajma.
Yeah.
And I would always wonder why. I like it. Everyone else is eating it.
Yeah.
But then you grew up and you realize it actually doesn't suit you.
Yeah.
But she was saying it from that constitution point of view, but you never saw it. That's what I'm saying. I wish, this is what this podcast is for. You can educate yourself and then enhance or deplete, move away or, walk towards it, whatever you get to know about yourself.
Absolutely.
Amazing. I think Sohani's lucky that, she's at that baseline.
Hopefully, if she can take it in and then use it. But the thing is, like you said, right, your grandmother's words are still in your head.
Yeah.
You may not always believe it at that point. But
at that point,
But the fact that it's in the back of your head, it's benefiting you today. And it's not too late. It's never too late.
That's true. That's true. So much of modern wellness today, is really like anxiety wearing a green juice costume. How do you tell the difference between someone genuinely caring for their body and someone just trying to control it?
And there's a very big difference. I'll tell you, when somebody is caring for their body, they're in flow. Listen, if your wellness routine is stressing you out and it's creating lack of ease, it's going to lead to disease. So when I meet somebody who is very rigid on the edge, their eyes are like very, very tight. They're almost like their eyelids are all up and they're very like worried about what they're doing. I'm like, you may do everything right. There's lack of ease. Lack of ease will lead to disease. When I meet somebody who honors the cycles of the universe, is in flow, and is at ease with themselves, you're on a wellness path. And there's a third category. I'm blind. I don't want to even think about this. I am going to overeat, overindulge, and they're more stagnant in their systems. You can see them more stagnant. They're a little bit more like sitting, like they're slow to move.
Yeah.
Then that's the other side of the problem. It's what we call tamas. I don't even want to see the reality. I want to be blind to it. And my excuse is, because my mental health, if I become too stressed, it's going to create disease. There are people who say that, right? They're like, you can eat anything as long as you're not worried. No, that's not true.
Yeah.
You want to have a relationship with your foods. You want to have a relationship with the cycles of nature. And you want to have a relationship with your body. And you want that relationship to be a three-way loving relationship.
And in harmony.
In harmony, basically.
Yeah.
For love, harmony, coherence, and anything else. But I would say that it's easier to get sick if you are all out, stressed about your routines. I've seen people like that who come to me, very, very intense, doing everything right, measuring their food, weighing stuff. Short term, they get benefits. Long term, they're burned out mentally. They've lost all their friends. The husbands are like, let them just, or husbands or wives or their spouses are like, let's stay away from this 440-volt human being. And for them to soften the reins is much harder. But when I've seen somebody who's completely like, I've never cared in my life.
Ignorant.
But the minute they allow a window to open,
it's easier.
It almost becomes easier, because even a small shift, like they'll stop eating dinner late at night. They'll say, oh my God, I'm feeling so much better.
Yeah.
So they have an easier time feeling better in their bodies.
I completely agree. I think anyway in life, if you see the larger picture, rigidity is hard to treat. easiness is easy to maneuver. Just in life, if you see as a concept.
Yeah.
So that works in everything, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell me, Nidhi, what's a habit that almost everyone is convinced is as healthy, but according to you, you actually watch people quietly wreck their digestion, sleep, and hormones?
Is green juicing and raw salads.
Yeah, I think it's also promoted as the biggest weight loss hack.
Weight loss, healthy. Like I see anybody who's eating salad, people commenting around, oh, you eat so healthy, or you eat so well. Oh, I'm naturally healthy. I eat salads. It is really wrecking your gut over a period of time. Now, I'm not saying don't do salads. I'm saying do salads as a little side, pair it with olive oil, lemon juice, vinegar. Eat it the way it was eaten traditionally.
Correct. Always with oil.
Always with oil,
Yeah.
always with lemon juice or vinegar and good, it has its flavoring. It's also sitting there. All the things that are used in a salad are naturally slightly acidic in a way that it transforms. It already starts the cooking process without actually using fire. It starts a breakdown of the salad, and that supports its digestion. Without that, you are really affecting the climate or the microbiome of your gut. They don't respond well to raw foods. It creates gut dysbiosis after a period of time, and it can be very harmful.
Yeah, because I think in today's world, I would say anyone who's in the age bracket between 21 and 40 strongly believe in salads, raw foods, even raw desserts, raw everything. And a lot of health cafes promote that kind of food. And people think, even whether it's weight loss or not, but people think that kind of food, it's easier to digest, it's easier on the system, curries are heavy, Indian food is heavy. And I've heard loads of people say that. But I met another expert who was here, and she said to me, please, do not eat raw food. Like, the thumb rule of Ayurveda is no raw food, because your body doesn't know how to break it down. Yeah. The whole point of cooked food is your body can break it down. So I want you to explain to the people listening that importance of cooked food.
Yeah.
Why the raw food can actually, like you said, harm your body.
Yeah.
And thirdly, how today the young generation believes in raw desserts, raw cacao, raw this, raw that, juicing. I mean, juicing has still died down quite a bit, at least as far as I know in our, whereabouts. But I feel like the raw food system is really booming.
Yeah. Okay, so then let's start with this, right? So what I said earlier is that when you study the evolution of human beings, how we became human from chimps and apes, we are very much like that, is we discovered fire to cook our foods. We discovered fire to cook our foods. Our gut bacteria changed. Our brain became bigger, and because we had to put very little energy in digesting the food, we activated our food to a point where the nutrients became available, but we were able to use them. Your digestive system has to work much, much less. So that's the first logic. Anybody can do this research and see what happened to our gut. It's what makes us human. Now, secondly, whatever you eat, it comes out of your system looking the same. The journey that raw food has to make to go through that entire process of digestion, it's a really, really long journey. And it puts a lot of tax. It has to use a lot of energy from your gut. It depletes the gut. It kind of sucks its juices. I mean, I'm just using words that are easy to understand to do it. Thirdly, I want you to think about this, right? What do you need to transform anything? If you have to cook food, you need fire. You have to charge your phone, you need electricity. When your hormones change and you become reproductive, warmth happens in the body. Plants cannot do photosynthesis without the sun. Nothing in the world can transform unless it's warm. And your gut is a metabolic organ, and which means it's breaking things down. And
it's like an engine, like you said. It needs the oil.
Yeah, it needs the warmth. You put things in the refrigerator when you don't want them to break down, when you want to preserve them. You want your gut to be a warm, active place. And that is only possible when foods are cooked or they're mildly fermented. I like cooking more than fermentation. In some cultures, you have to ferment. Some foods you need to ferment, like bread, for example. But otherwise, it needs that kind of warmth. Even fermentation is a form of warmth.
Yeah.
Even vinegar, if you put salad and you put vinegar or lemon juice, you're already creating that activation process. So that's third. So unless it's warm, it cannot transform. So cooked foods, great. Also, our foods have something that we call prana, life force. And that life force is locked in your foods, right? So if you get, let's just say, a carrot or a zucchini, it's locked inside. It's a lot. It's very high. When it's in its raw form, it's very high prana, but it's locked prana. Prana is how much life is flowing through it. So if you keep a carrot out, let's just say on your countertop, it's going to be a few days before it starts to actually visibly rot. Now you cook that carrot. Let's say it's fresh. Now instead of putting it on your countertop, you've decided to cook it. You've activated its prana, which means that the life force flowing through it is rapid. Now, if you put the same carrot on your countertop, it's going to go bad in like 3 hours.
Correct.
Because the life force is very activated. So the truth is, when you want to eat your foods, you activate life force. You start cooking, you cook the process. And you want to consume it in the next hour, 2, 3, while the life force is still in its youth, in its prime.
Yeah.
Because after that, then it starts decaying.
Yeah.
So you're activating life force. You're activating life force. You're making it easier on digestion. It's really, you bring less tax on your gut. It's really what made us human. Unless it's warm, it cannot transform. It's a no-brainer. People who do raw foods for a long period of time, I'll tell you what's going to happen to them.
Yeah.
The joints are going to start cracking.
Cracking.
You will see visibly that their skin is dry. Let them not even tell you that, okay? For a few days, they may look great, they may feel great, they may tell you, I have so much energy. Very quickly, that energy will become overstimulation. Their sleep will be affected. They won't even know what's affecting their sleep. They'll be like, oh, that's independent. My sleep is affected. So their sleep will start getting affected. They'll start getting bloating. Their skin will start looking dry. They will always be from like feeling like more energy to feeling like overstimulation. Their body cannot settle down. Bones start to lose it after a while. Constipation will happen. And they reach their, like what I say, drying is dying. Before anything dies, you have a fruit, it's ripe, you let it sit, it'll start decaying, it'll start drying.
Yeah.
Leaves, I live in the US, when we go from summer to winter, the leaves dry out. When we get older, think about somebody like a really old person, they're drier.
Yeah.
We lose our juices. Our juices are what keep us full of life. And when you do a lot of raw foods and everything raw, you strip the good fats and the cooking process, which the cooking fat activates the prana, the water. You cook something, you'll see as a fruit or a vegetable. When you cook it, it softens because the water is activated. You're depriving your body. You're depriving your body of all of this. So anybody who's doing raw foods, when they go back to cooked foods, they start feeling so much better. Gradually, they introduce. Can you imagine, Ashna, if you went to a jungle, let's just say you were trapped, and it had an orchard full of really good fruits. Maybe you can survive on those fruits and feel nourished. You may survive forever, but you may feel nourished for a few days. You're like, oh, these mangoes, these guavas, yummy. But can you imagine after 21, 30, 40 days to actually feel like eating that?
No.
If you notice, all comfort foods are warm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Every comfort food in the world is warm.
Right.
As human beings, we seek, like my inner climate method goes into that, Ashna, that as human beings, our bodies inside are warm and moist, and outside we seek warmth and moisture. You don't like a cold room, you don't like a hot room, you just like a warm room.
We like warm people as well.
Warm people, exactly. That's what I say. We like warm people. Love is warm, gratitude is warm, compassion is warm. Cold is stagnation, hot is jealousy, anger, etc. But even in our foods, it's the balance of yin and yang. It's the balance of the sun and moon. It's what we gravitate towards. And we've lost that wisdom. And that's one of the things that as human beings, we knew that, we understood that. And now we're just too much in our heads.
Sometimes it's not even losing the wisdom. Like, I'll give you an example. My grandma told me certain things, like I mentioned before, right? Now, that's a generation ahead of my mom. So that's passed down to me. Now, if I don't pass that down to my kid, he might go into the trend of juicing and whatever. So it's not that the wisdom is lost. I feel like it's more like it's not passed down. A lot of times today, people don't educate their children, their friends, or whoever they know, because it's just easier to, order. It's just easier to go and eat whatever's available. Like the effort, right? Like you said, everyone's become busier and busier. It's harder to make a khichdi than to put a salad together.
Yeah.
So it's also sometimes like lack of effort. who's going to, because if you teach your,
Convenience.
it's convenience. If you teach your children that cooked food is important, they'll want cooked food from you.
Yeah.
So it's also sometimes like easier.
Yeah.
Everyone's life's getting busier. Most women were homemakers before.
Yeah.
Now it's not the case.
Yeah.
So I just feel like the wisdom isn't lost. It's not getting passed down. And it's like everyone's surrendering to this fast-paced,
Convenience.
fast-paced, like
Yeah.
next.
Yeah.
No one's like
Yeah.
breathing,
Yeah.
sitting, eating.
Yeah.
Like I remember as a child, eating was a process. You had to sit down, you had to
Yeah.
wait. Your food would come
Yeah.
in a thali. You would serve yourself.
Yeah.
And then you would know, you would have to know, like my grandma was very particular, you had to know what you took in your plate and
Yeah.
that's the amount you need.
Yeah.
Don't take more, take less if wanted.
Yeah.
You can reserve,
Yeah.
but try and take appropriate amount.
Yeah.
And then it was a process to know what your body wants and how much you're craving and
Yeah.
how what your hunger level is.
Yeah.
Then to sit and eat and no big conversations,
Yeah.
no TV, nothing.
Yeah.
But see how that's changed as well, right?
That
Everyone
is.
puts on the TV for their kids so you can just finish food. They take
Yeah.
so long to eat. Who has the time
Yeah.
to sit?
Yeah.
So I think instead of losing, it's become like, let's finish it up.
Yeah. You know,
It's a task.
you're so right that as we become more modern, which is great in many ways, but we've kind of become like the let's what's next mentality. And then also, Ashna, our generation, we did not receive the wisdom in the same way that our grandmothers received it.
Correct.
They were living in larger groups. When you're living in a larger community, there are wisdom carriers of the family. And there's so many numbers, right? There's a lot of, so if you're growing up, for example, I grew up with 7 kids in the family, there's always power in numbers. So we all have to do this together. Nobody's questioning it. So when we lived in big families and there were wisdom keepers, gatekeepers of all of that, like the nannies and the dadis said, okay, today is, for example, Navratri. And, you know, it's the first, this is what you're going to do. This is Ekadashi, this is what you're going to do. And you never question it because you're so many numbers. You know, when you feel comfortable, everybody's doing it, we're doing it.
That's true.
Now, as the families became smaller, we lost some of these wisdom keepers because we have nuclear families. Plus, even if they existed in the, you know, just the one unit joint family, there's enough questioning happening because there's not numbers. We are more intellectually driven, we are more questioning. So all of this has changed altogether from us becoming more go to losing our wisdom keepers, to living in smaller families, to and having access to health information. We didn't have access to it.
Correct.
And traditions were, in large numbers, rituals become very important. And all our traditions in India and all our rituals were actually designed for well-being.
I completely agree. I think I had another guest who kind of, really threw light on why Navratri happened at that time, how many times a year, and how it was according to the moon and the body and the heat and whatever. And I was fascinated because I've seen it since I was a kid, but we never really asked why.
Yeah.
We did it.
Yeah.
Like you said, I also grew
Yeah.
up in a very large family.
Yeah.
And when it was Navratri, that's the only food you got.
Yeah.
So everybody just ate it,
Yeah.
and the fasts were happening. So
You didn't
everybody,
question.
no questions
Yeah.
asked. In the
Yeah.
evening, that's the food, the
Yeah.
fast food you got.
Yeah.
And in fact, sometimes we used to joke, oh, now 9 days of this. And you're like, yeah. And then there was no questioning of going to a McDonald's and eating just because you didn't like it.
Yeah.
When we were growing up, there was
Yeah.
nothing of that.
Yeah.
You sat at home quietly and ate that
Yeah.
food. But you're right. We didn't really, we weren't really taught
Yeah.
why.
Yeah.
Because like you said, the
Yeah.
larger formats, the information exchange was very high.
Yeah.
And as we're getting smaller
Yeah.
and smaller in groups,
Yeah.
there's no time. And therefore, nobody has time.
Nobody has that.
Well, let's hope that this can change a lot of things. So tell me, like you mentioned, your work revolves around the inner climate, and I had a little chance to read about it, and you've explained it very nicely.
Yeah.
If someone could see the inner climate today, what would stress actually look like? Would it look like anxiety, inflammation, perfectionism, or people pleasing?
So I'll tell you, when I talk about the climate, right? Firstly, stress could be all of those things. But stress is definitely, there is a speed to stress. For some people, stress feels hot and dry, and it becomes from an emotional feeling of hot and dry to then a physical feeling. So it can become inflammation. And that heat can show up in their skin, it can show up in every symptom that they have in their body. That stress, if you look at the word stress, there's an intensity, there's a sharpness to it. Again, that sharpness comes up in perfectionism as well. So all of these things that you're showing, right? Every emotion can have a corresponding climate. For some people, stress freezes them. So it can just stop things. That's a small percentage of the population. And they realize that their body responds to stress by just freezing. Everything becomes stagnant. They stress sleep, they stress eat, they stress stop, they stress give up. That's what their stress looks like. So everybody can look very different, but all of the things that you said are almost what most people do experience. But even anxiety, right? Anxiety is different. Anxiety has a speed to it. And it usually has a speed which goes nowhere. You can be stressed and really still perform and have action.
Yeah.
Anxiety is movement in your nervous system, but it's like a wind. It's just all over. You don't even know how to think. You lose clarity and it starts to bring fear. So it's that real strong experience of this overwhelming wind in your nervous system becomes anxiety. That leads to a different set of emotions, like I said, insomnia, bloating, etc., etc. But like even anger is different. That's hot again. And depression is very sluggish. So every emotion has a corresponding inner climate. And as that climate changes, you start to actually you actually start to show physical symptoms that align with that climate.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense because the physical symptoms don't just occur on their own.
Yeah.
They obviously come from inside. And, when you see people who are really sluggish, I always think to myself, like, sometimes you can be like, what a lazy person.
Yeah.
But you don't know, like,
Yeah.
the backstory,
Yeah.
what's led them to be like that.
Yeah.
And like you said, could be the inner climate.
It could be the inner climate, and like of course your inner climate can change and evolve depending on what you've experienced as a child, what you're consuming today. So if somebody who's very sluggish is going to say that I'm going to watch Netflix every night, is going to start believing that my body needs extra sleep, I have to sleep into the morning hours, and is going to eat a lot of cold foods, heavy ice cream, cheese, bread, and not going to confront anything in their lives and hold on to an emotion very long, you're going to further your existing imbalance. Now, the same person, because I work with so many people, I've seen this, the same person who's sluggish, sedentary, now says, okay, I want to, firstly, for them to actually make a change is hard in the beginning.
I agree.
But the minute the window opens and the decision is made, they're very good to follow through. So they make a decision, then they'll start with small bits of movement. I tell them wear different colors, listen to different music, meet different people, go and clean up your closet, because they will even hold on to weight, they'll hold on to
Things.
they'll hold on to feelings. But then they can start a process and they can do really, really well in life. So basically, you're right that sometimes, yes, we are born with that kind of a inner climate, and then we can further the imbalance by the choices we make.
Yeah, like I said, before you enhance it.
Yeah.
You're given a baseline and then you enhance it, and people end up doing that.
Absolutely. Enhance, refine, and then become the best version of yourself.
So we inherit our mother's nervous system before we inherit anything else. What does a child absorb from a chronically exhausted, dysregulated mother? And is a mother's own regulation like the most underrated medicine in a household?
I think it is the most important medicine in the house. Like the single most important thing for a child is a regulated mother. While I am so much about wellness, I'm about what a mother eats, how she sleeps. If a mother doesn't breastfeed, doesn't sleep, doesn't do anything, but is just regulated and present, you can be regulated in your own bathroom, nobody sees. Regulated around the child. Your child is going to have a completely different experience of the world than a child whose mother is doing everything right by the book and is dysregulated. Even a baby, Ashna, right? When you see a baby exploring in the park, and this is like, let's just think 10 months, babies learn to crawl. And the baby looks at the new play, like an equipment, and is trying to climb on it. What the first thing the baby does is turn around and looks at the mother. We learn about the world. Our first feedback mechanism is our mother's expression. And how we try things, how adventurous we are, how safe we feel, all of it is dependent on the mother's regulation. So if there is one gift you want to give our kids before the food, before anything else, it is a regulated mother. In fact, there's a movie, right? Life is Beautiful. And it's about a father in a concentration camp with a child. And he just plays, he pretends that this is a game. And through his regulation, there's safety for a while created for that son. He doesn't realize that this is a concentration camp. You could be stuck in a hurricane, and when the mother looks peaceful and like, we got this, the children know it'll all be well. And you could have just lost a suitcase at the airport, and the mother is in a frenzy. The child is going to be like, this is the end of the world, because they don't have the sense to know what is big, what is small. They see what is big, what is small just through the mother's expressions. Now, this doesn't mean that all the mothers have to put endless pressure on themselves, because I will say that we as mothers also have come from generational trauma. We have inherited our mothers, our grandmothers, whatever, and they didn't have a chance to be self-aware the way we did. They had a lot of other tools because it was all built in place. The chanting, the systems, the rest, all of that was built in. But they didn't have the tools to be self-aware the way we do. So we're just starting the process. I tell each mother, and I tell this to myself, that Nidhi, just start the undoing, and then it'll flow through. You don't have to undo it all overnight.
Yeah.
But you just start that process.
I completely agree. And I think we don't even realize the amount of anxiety you can pick up. Like you said, losing a suitcase will seem so big, let's say, to the child because the mother is losing her temper or losing her mind over it. And in that moment, you won't realize that it's a big deal. But the child has thought it's a very big deal. So anything that doesn't work out even slightly, the child's going to lose their mind, because that's how they've learned to kind of conclude when something doesn't go their way or something unusual happens.
Unusual, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I've actually seen that a lot. And it makes me wonder, like, we don't even realize the consequences of your expression, your way of handling situations, how you handle stress or stressful situations or things thrown at you in life. Because life's always going to throw things at you. And what your children pick up. Because I see my son as well, right? And how he handles things. And he has this very nonchalant way of like, it's okay, it's fine. And, I don't want to give myself too much credit. I think he takes that even from his dad. Because my husband's a lot like, it's okay, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And I've seen my son pick that up.
Yeah.
Subconsciously, unconsciously, and he's literally like, don't worry, you'll figure it out. If it didn't happen, it's okay.
Yeah.
And sometimes he'll say things like, we have a problem. I'm like, what? This didn't happen. But I think it's okay. So it's like, we have a problem.
Yeah.
Then again, like you said, they look at the mother for the reaction.
Yeah.
And I think women underestimate themselves.
Oh, yeah. Listen, a woman has the ability to really dictate and regulate and control the emotional environment of the house.
Yeah.
And this is forever. Like, this is when our kids are older. This is when forever. Of course, those initial patterns are formed very, very young. When the child has very little comprehension of the world, the lesser he knows about the world, the more he knows about your moods. And that's a very big key opportunity for them to develop safety in their own nervous system.
I completely agree. There's a specific way, I think, also that mothers abandon themselves, right? Like feeding everyone first, sleeping last, ignoring their own signal for years. It's kind of like a cultural thing. Now, what do you think the female body in particular learns to go quiet?
When does it learn to go quiet?
Why do you think it learns to go quiet?
So we are naturally nurturers. Look, I mean, I don't want to undermine the man, but he's a seed. He lends seed to life. The woman is the earth, she's the water. Like, we take a man's seed and we are able to nurture it in our womb. Now, that is very reflective of our actual role to a family, that they can do very little. They can provide, like, that's it. That's all, like biologically. I'm talking about just biologically, right? I mean, of course, things are changing in terms of how we set up our cultural communities, and that's great. But biologically and biochemically, that's what we are. We are nurturers. We are liquid beings. We have amniotic fluid. We have breast milk. We could just carry the water. Water has property of just carrying, and we are flow, exactly, and we are that, right? And what has happened is that the demands that are being put on us, like, firstly, women, we are not nurtured. We're not living in larger communities. We don't have systems in place. Whether it was a woman who had to rest for 3 days. Now, that's a different conversation, whether you should do it or not, for 3 days for her menstrual cycle, or who was honored at certain rituals and who was treated as a Lakshmi when she was unmarried. And then there were other, so this is like, let's say 300 years before, like even before the British came, we had some of these systems in place. Women had a position in the cultural society, and we kind of lost that. Now we have these, suddenly then after that, our system became very patriarchal, and the man became supreme. And when the man became supreme, of course, then the woman, she's still, because you cannot not be a nurturer because you're born like that. So you place all these demands upon yourself in this patriarchal. So now you're putting the pressure. There's a whole system that's putting the pressure on you. And then we come into this generation, becomes nuclear families. And then you have the possibilities of doing everything out there in the world. So now we have newer possibilities that we've always wanted, but we have lesser support. We have more to do on our plate. We have more responsibility of passing everything on to our children. Things that our grandmothers passed on, others passed on. Now we've taken it all upon ourselves, because at their heart, women can be perfectionists. They want to get it right. So we have opportunities, but we have pressures. We've lost our biological soft makeup. and we are burning ourselves out. And I think it requires, again, women are easier to change, for us to become self-aware, to start slowing down, to realize that we don't have to conquer it all. A man has to work much harder for everything. If you look at all the spiritual texts, it was always a man who has to work. A woman doesn't have to do much work. Like if you look at the yogis are men, rishis are men. A devi, when you look at the stories of the devis, they're not really doing much work because we are gifted. We already have that intuition. We already know how to house life within us. In fact, like I don't want to get into the whole text of it, like how women receive their own spiritual growth is just not even through a strong practice. It's just through being in her feminine all by herself. So we have a lot within us that we can already nurture, but we need to preserve ourselves. We need to preserve our rasa, our fluid,
Yeah.
physically, emotionally, spiritually, in every way possible.
So, as we discussed in a lot of Indian families over the years and over generations, there was this grandmother knowledge of, eating turmeric and oil massages and eating with the seasons, like we discussed. What's it like to now see all of this as premium Western wellness for you?
Yeah.
Because you live in the West.
Yeah.
And what's it like to watch the same mothers who rejected it pay it back in English?
Honestly, all of it is very fulfilling and I feel very grateful, right? So I know that there could be a stance to it, but like, okay, look, now you're coming back to it. To be quite frank, I don't feel like this. I feel very excited and happy. I'm like, it doesn't matter how and when you're coming back, the fact that you're coming back. And when you come back and I tell you that, listen, we have this, it's already inbuilt in the system, then you believe it more. It's validating my system. I cannot tell you how happy I am that it's validating the systems that have already existed.
Yeah.
And I do realize that why people got disconnected from it, because we really started valuing the, like the current day, extremely short-term research-led. Research is great, don't get me wrong. But I think most of the research out there is not really strong research. It's not foolproof at all.
Yeah, it's not backed by a lot of evidence.
And not when it's against your natural intuition. Like most of the research, which sounds really bizarre, like for example, drink this much apple cider vinegar and that's going to happen. Like it feels wrong to your body.
Yeah.
And people still will be like, oh, but the research shows this. Like when you're going against your own intelligence. But otherwise, so I think people were misled, right? Look, there's so much noise and the messaging out there is so fear driven that I can understand why people lost their way. I'm just happy that there are people who are bringing people back to their way. When people do a study on chronobiology, which is the circadian rhythms, nobody is really making money out of it. You're just telling people go to sleep when you're sleeping and wake up when you should be waking up. I'm really grateful for that. I'm very happy that people are going back into this kind of stuff. And then trust me, there is enough money being put into studies to promote substances that people want to promote, that pharmaceuticals want to promote, like resveratrol, right, which now is like a bogus drug. But I'm not going to take names. People who know a certain person said, oh my God, like I'm going to do all these studies on resveratrol, which they found out the studies were all like bogus and they don't even run. And then it became like this drug. And then, of course, he has the companies which are selling this compound, selling this supplement.
Yeah.
Right. So, of course, everything, there's a push. There's a push by a marketing agency. We don't even know how deep this goes.
Yeah, like I don't know if you remember reading when I was much younger, how cereals were pushed in a certain decade as breakfast, just as a marketing thing by those industries that were funded by the government at the time.
Yeah.
And then every child was eating breakfast, eating cereal for breakfast, and by cereal I mean cornflakes, as the primary source of nutrients. But it doesn't have any nutrients.
Exactly.
It's plastic. It's not even food.
Exactly. Do you know that even in America, we study the food pyramid? And a lot of that is also pushed by, it's not just taken into account by nutritionists. It's a lot of pushed by the business people.
Yeah, of course. It's lobbying by the businesses.
Yeah. What is it that you want to sell to the end consumer? Let's push that idea first, and then and then the industry around it thrives.
Yeah.
So like, for example, when I think it was Colgate or some brand, when they wanted to sell more toothpaste, they increased the size of the toothbrush and they gave you free toothbrushes. Now you're used to all of that so much toothpaste in your mouth. So when you use less toothpaste, you're like, I'm not even brushing my teeth. So this has been done again and again and again. And listen, not to say this is the world. I'm not a hater.
I mean,
but just keep coming back to your wisdom. When you keep coming back to your wisdom, you don't need all of that. Listen, a deer is not going to get carried away and say that I'm going to eat meat. And a lion is not going to get carried away and say I'm going to wake up at 5 a.m. They don't get carried away. Like a worm is not going to be like, suddenly I'm going to behave like a monkey. A worm is a worm is a worm. and the bear will hibernate no matter what you do. You can have the best Christmas party in December, but he's going to be like, sorry, I'm in my cave.
So true.
So you just keep coming back to the way we're supposed to live and just keep going back gradually back and back to that, and you're fine.
I think the main line that I picked up from what you said is so true. Like, keep coming back. People, there's always going to be marketing. And like you said, there's no hating on that.
Yeah.
That's how the world works.
Yeah.
That's how businesses run.
Yeah.
You're being sold things that you don't necessarily need. And it's fine. Everyone's making a living somewhere.
Yeah.
But use your brain.
Yeah.
Don't be blind by it. Most of I feel like the food industry push-offs are, like you said very correctly, an idea is planted first, and then a product is introduced to you. So that first you're convinced by the idea, and then you're like, oh my God, there's a solution to this, and then you see the product, and then you automatically buy it. So it's like psychology, right?
Oh my God.
Of the mind.
Yeah. We're influenced all the time.
Yeah, where you learn to kind of first get used to the fact that you need herbal tea before sleeping. For example, you'll only get really good sleep. Tons of research is suddenly shown and suddenly marketed. If you drink this tea, you're going to get amazing sleep. And then 3 months later, there's this array of teas that have come out, and you're like, see, there's a solution to this problem. It wasn't a problem to begin with. Everyone can just sleep. You don't need a tea to sleep. But it's like a problem is created and then a solution's given.
And a single solution is sold. To me, like, okay, problem is created, but you can have, and if somebody's giving you multiple solutions, like somebody comes to me, I will tell them, yes, drink that chamomile tea. But you don't have to. You can also massage your feet with the wood. You can wash your face. You can do this breath work. You can listen to water sounds. You can do, if there's one single solution for a single problem being sold to you,
be wary of it. Yeah.
Something is wrong. There have to be multiple solutions. That's why nobody's making, it's not a money making.
I agree. Because there are multiple solutions to everything.
Yeah.
And if there aren't, then it's clearly an agenda.
It's a marketing gimmick.
Yeah, it's an agenda. Is there such a thing as emotional constipation? And I don't mean this, Nidhi, just from an Ayurvedic lens, as a holistic lens, Can people become physically sick from feelings they've never allowed themselves to process?
Yeah, I think, emotional constipation can mean different things to different people. But you're absolutely right. Just how we have a physical ability to digest, we have an emotional ability to digest. And so we say that you have a physical Agni, which is your digestive fire, but you have an emotional Agni. So which means you have had an experience and you've been able to feel it, then you've been able to heal it, and you've been able to take the learnings from it, what works for you, what it's taught you, how it's enriched your experience, and then actually flush out what has not, what basically the residue of that experience. And that can only happen with the first process, which is feel it. Feel it fully, like eat it fully, eat that experience fully, then you digest it fully. And yes, you're absolutely right, I think, as human beings, because we don't have the tools of digestion, of emotional digestion. And because we don't have the tools, we just keep like stuffing them.
Yeah.
And we keep, and the way we deal with certain emotions is by giving us more emotions. So something felt uncomfortable, let me now watch my screen. Let me do something which is going to preoccupy my body so it does not have to deal with this. Yeah. So I think we do that a lot. And I think that's why for our children, even since we've brought in parenting in this conversation, to give them tools to process their emotions, which most parents, we ourselves don't have, is also a gift. But you can absolutely. So for example, a tool that I can talk about, with my own children that I use is like, if something's feeling very exhausting, you'll see like a child, for example, becomes really tensed. We become really tensed. And in that, we shorten our breath. And when you shorten your breath, it's mostly inhalations. In inhalations, your body stays in something called the sympathetic mode, which means it doesn't have clarity, it's not repairing, it's not healing, it's not processing. It's just activated. But in that moment now, if you just exhale, and you slow down your breath. You don't have to take deep breaths. That's passé. Just slow down your breath. Just make sure you exhale. Your body relaxes. And now from being activated, it's gone into repair mode, parasympathetic. In that repair mode, automatically your brain has more blood flow. There is more clarity. There's an integration. Your rational and your emotional brain come together. So that's one tool. Like your breath is a tool. Music is a tool. Feeling your feet on the ground is a tool. Humming is one of the best tools in the world. If you don't know anything else, just hum in a moment. That instantly, mechanically puts your body in repair, because a hum is nothing but an exhale.
Correct.
If you hum, your mouth is closed and you're basically using your exhale to make a sound. Body relaxes. So we could give any tools. Journaling is a tool, talking is a tool. But we need to give our kids enough tools. I'm not even talking meditation, right? People will say, oh, I don't like to meditate, now I have no tools. Forget meditation. You'll come to it one point. When your body is feeling safe enough to sit with itself, you'll come to meditation.
Yeah.
But let's at least start with how do you start creating that safety in little bits. Even music is a great tool, by the way.
You know, I love what you said. If your body is safe enough to sit with itself, sometimes people don't even feel mentally safe enough to sit with themselves, right? They constantly need to be surrounded by people. They constantly need to be surrounded by company, by things to do, keeping themselves busy. Because if the mind is still, you have to face your own demons, and most people don't want to. So, stillness of the body is one thing. Even stillness of the mind is scary.
Because of that.
And because
Because
then you have to actually like face your conflicts, you have to face your thoughts, you have to face all the downs, all the bads, all the goods, everything. And like you said, we weren't taught tools. So it's
Yeah.
easier to just walk away or say, brush on the carpet, like, I don't think I need to worry about this. It's too silly. But it's still there.
It's exactly there. And you know, one of the reasons why it's hard for us to sit still with ourselves is because the minute the body stops, it slows down. The mind, the noise of the mind becomes more active. The minute you're in pause. And if you're in pause and you can observe your breath, then every thought that comes starts to be regulated if you're observing your breath. But if you're not observing your breath, let's just say, and you're sitting still, the mind like comes up as sensation. So it may not even, you may not even be, before the thought, there is a feeling.
Yeah.
So there are uncomfortable sensations in the body that we've not even tapped into that start to arise.
Yeah.
And then you're like, okay, let me fidget, let me move my legs, let me be on the phone, let me like do something else. And that's why it's a journey. And I have deep compassion for all of us because really we're not being able to catch how much is thrown at us. So we all should have mercy and compassion for ourselves. And yet we should all be on this journey of self-awareness and giving ourselves enough tools.
Yeah. And I think, you know, as years have gone by, like I think I used to be a very opinionated person, and I had a lot of like opinions on how people functioned and how they processed information and how they process conflict. And I was like, why can't they just, you know? But as years have gone by, like I have a kind lens which I didn't have, because now I'm like, they may not have the tools, nobody taught them, they don't know any better.
Yeah.
You know, and I think, I don't know if that comes with age or that comes with experience, that comes with time, but I think the more you start to be kind to everyone else, then you're kinder to yourself even.
So true. Exactly, Ashna. I think that's the truest statement. And we don't realize that by offering kindness to people who are not kind to others, we're usually harsh on ourselves.
Correct.
And when you believe that people don't change, you don't have trust in your own ability to change.
Yeah.
When you're kind to others and you're kind to the fact that they're having their journey, you're kind to yourself, and you have more belief in yourself that you're having a journey.
Yeah, this has been my biggest learning in the last few years.
Yeah.
And you know, this is why like the judgment has really gone down, or the opinions have really gone down, because you just like, you don't know what lens somebody's living under. You know, you don't know what they're going through, and you don't know what they've been taught, the generation trauma they've been given.
Yeah.
The tools they didn't have as a child or weren't given, and just because you've been given, you expect others to have it, but no, people don't have it.
Yeah, people don't, and yet it's a responsibility to go and seek out those tools, right? Because not everybody has been given tools.
I agree.
At some point, it's a responsibility to go and find those tools. And if you want a better life, I mean, simply, it's a simple formula. You want a better life, find your tools.
I agree. And then there's the other side where people are sitting and blaming parents, grandparents, generations, not being given things, entitlement. That's the lazy part where you're not seeking it. Like, I mean, that is a side as well. But I'm just talking about the people who are trying.
Overall.
Yeah, overall. You know, the overall lens is like, just be kinder.
Yeah.
So do you ever worry that Ayurveda is flattened into an aesthetic? You know, it's almost like pretty morning routines, aspirational rituals, all these yoga kits, and losing its actual depth in the process? Do you ever worry about that?
I don't worry about that at all, no. Ashna, because I think everything has a curve, you know. I mean, listen, like, I'm just happy that people are talking about Ayurveda. And, you know, there are always seekers. Once you've experienced the true depth of Ayurveda, even in an instance, right? You may just go for Ayurveda skincare brand launch. Let's just say that brand is not even Ayurvedic. But they decide to bring somebody on just to have a little 10-minute conversation on Ayurveda. And something sticks with you. And you start ruminating on it. And then you're like, oh, I want to look this up. Or I want to think about this deeper. I want to make connections. That's enough. So I'm like, listen, bring it in any way you can. And it doesn't have to be, look, it is the science of life. If somebody says it has to be done like this, or it has to be done like that, or it has to be Indian in this way, or it has to be ritualistic, it's not. Ayurveda is the kindest science out there. And I'm happy in whichever way it comes up. Even if people don't want to call it Ayurveda, they want to follow the science of life, follow it. It's just the science of life. And what helps us by giving it a name is because there is literature around it.
Right.
And traditional Chinese medicine is very similar. There's Greek, Hippocrates has written similar stuff. They all realize what the science of life is. But literature was not preserved like that. We have the most literature preserved. I mean, you have just a rich inheritance. That's why I lean on it. So yeah, you lean on it as Ayurveda, lean on it as something else. But really, if I think as long as we're talking about it, it's great. And even if we stop talking about it, some point we want to live better as human beings.
Yeah.
There will be somebody in the crowd who will say, I don't want to be in this world outside. I want to really understand our wisdom inside. And then tools are brought when you have the seeking, the answers appear. I know that's what happened to me. So I have no doubt that, listen, it'll have its own cycles and come back the way it needs to anytime it does.
You said something about Ayurvedic products, and that word was in my head, and it made me think while you were talking that a lot of times now beauty brands, use that as a title because it kind of makes it more authentic, and it justifies the price. It makes it look more superior than a regular cream or a treatment ointment or whatever. Do you feel like a lot of it is hoax?
I will say that there are certain products that I love. I mean, they're very traditional, though, those products. But like, for example, you could have a certain face oil, and a lot of them are really good. And you have saffron in it. And I will say that it will give you some benefit. There are chances. So some of it is hoax, some of it is marketing, some of it is how do I take modern skincare, dermatology, put a little bit of Ayurveda. Some of it is like makes no sense at all. So there's a whole range. Like some of it is like just like nothing, right?
So tell a common person like me, like how do you look for signs, like what is genuine, what isn't? Because everything is marketed so well nowadays, it's hard to tell sometimes that is it genuinely an Ayurvedic product or is it just a scam?
So I will tell you that firstly, if there's 150 complicated names which are all chemicals, and there's one little
Ashwagandha written at the back.
Yeah, forget it. Forget it. But if you read like, okay, oil and then be 3 ingredients which are like maybe, which are not crazy, and then you have saffron. So you have to look at the ingredients. I also always like to look at the founders. And you can tell as human beings, who's really in it for what. So I think it's like, yes, first is ingredients. Then you look at the company, its messaging, its founder. If you really want to use it like for your lifelong, it's like your favorite product, then you want to dig in a little bit. If you want to just try it one time, just buy the bottle, look at the ingredients before you buy the bottle, and then just try it out. And then and see how it works for you. But I'd say you want to do it that way. But like, listen, it's very evident. Like sometimes you'll see this crazy, like, I don't want to name brands, but like whatever, with some crazy brand with like just one little thing.
Yeah.
So
I've seen, I saw this one cream and I think it had like, like you said, I remember turning it around, very fancy bottle, and it says the Ayurvedic night routine or something.
yeah,
And I turned it around and had like
500 things.
500 things on it, and at the bottom it said something turmeric, something. And I was like, oh wow, so after 500 chemicals it has like one turmeric which is in my kitchen.
And sometimes they put it first and then everything else, right? And so it's in the front. Oh, the Ayurveda.
Yeah. That's what I said. It said Ayurvedic night routine oil.
Yeah.
And at the back, there was nothing Ayurvedic about it except that one turmeric, maybe for the color or I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
And and I was like, that's in my kitchen. The rest, everything else is chemicals.
Yeah.
So you're right. It's very important to actually read because the labels nowadays can be so misleading when it comes to food.
Front labels are misleading. Back labels are a little bit more telling.
Yeah, I agree. And, the common person actually just looks at the front and buys it because it looks pretty and it looks like you're buying into the idea of whatever you want to buy into the idea of. So tell me, if someone could change only one habit, for the next 1 year, not because it's trendy, because it genuinely transforms their inner climate, what would it be?
If it's only one, eat an early dinner. Small, early, light dinner. Just one. One thing you want to change for how you feel in your body, it's that.
Everyone wants longevity.
Yeah.
Right? This idea is becoming more and more obsessive as time is going by. Tell me, very few people ask what makes life worth living longer. How would Ayurveda define a successful long life?
A life, okay, of course it sounds cliche, but a life that has been lived fully is a full life is far more than a long life. At the end of the day, we come on this planet with the planet has not just given us a gift and says, hey, you have a life. Your life is a gift, I'm going to say long. But at the same time, we're part of a larger ecosystem. When you look at it biologically, it says, its reproduction is that ecosystem. Anything on the planet that does not contribute to the planet becomes a parasite, right? And even parasites have their roles, by the way. Even they have their roles. Like, mosquitoes are food for the bats. So there's always even that. So everything is perfectly orchestrated. As human beings, we are meant so that the species can continue to go on. And then as we become these evolved beings, there is life purpose that you're here. As long as, and you, whatever life purpose, in your life purpose, you're in flow. You've lost sense of time, you've lost sense of space, you don't have this identity, you become egoless, right? Like when I would do my work, so I'll lose sense of everything. You lose sense of your name. So that's when you're in your purpose. When you're in your purpose, whatever you're doing is creating a ripple effect energetically in the universe. Like a musician who gets lost in their music changes lives, an artist in his art, whatever you're doing. So if you're in your purpose, and when you're in your purpose, you're not obsessed with your physical body, by the way. When you are in the purpose of appreciating this planet around you and its rhythms and its processes, the more you appreciate it, the more in awe and wonder you are, you're going to fall into those rhythms. And the more you fall into those rhythms, there's an ecological system that kind of furthers, even when we sleep, when we awake, when we are breathing, how we are breathing changes the ecosystem around us, by the way. It has a subtle impact on the plants around us and on the wake and the sleeping cycles. So the more you're in sync with nature, great longevity hack. The more you stay in your purpose, great longevity hack. But you're not looking for a longevity hack. You're actually looking for a full life experience.
I agree.
So when you start looking for a full life experience, then you're actually unlocking longevity. So as a side effect, because the planet can make use of you more. Now, if you are, the truth is we're one of the only 4 species at menopause, 4 or 5 species. Most species on the planet, when they finish their women, like the female species, when they're done with their child-giving phase, they die. But we've stayed on because at some point as we evolved, the role of grandmothers became important to the progeny, the further grandchildren. So as long as they have a purpose, imagine if you have a cell in your body that's not reproducing, that's not doing anything, that's just occupying space. You want to flush it out of your system. If you have even one cell in your body, if it stays inside, a cell that's not useful in your body, what does it become? Cancer.
Cancer, yeah, useless.
So it's useless. We don't want to be cancer on the planet. And if you're just obsessed with self-preservation, that's what you become. So it's really, I want to just end this answer by one more thing. People have heard of Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger, great investors of that time, super in flow. 99, Charlie Munger was 99. He was still at the annual general meeting of Berkshire Hathaway, drinking a big glass of Coke and eating McDonald's burger. But he was always in his purpose. And you could see it in his voice, you could see in the work he does. And when you're in your purpose, time stops. That is, aging doesn't happen the same way.
I agree.
So I would say that the biggest longevity hack is wanting to live your life fully and finding your purpose.
Because I think that's a very beautiful way of kind of wrapping this up, that, as much as we obsess about mental health, physical health, spiritual health, all of these different verticals of life, in the end, it's purpose. And if you really live purposefully, everything else gets fulfilled.
Okay.
Yeah, great.
Amazing. Yay!